And now, the Lowdown, with economist and political strategist Elson Lowe. And now, the Lowdown, with economist and political strategist Elson Lowe.
Good evening, Guyana. Good evening, Guyana. This is the Lowdown. Thank you for joining me. I'm your host, Elson Lowe. Thank you for starting your week off on a high with Elson Lowe. It's good to be back here. This is our second show of the second night of the Lowdown. We're going to be having a Tuesday and a Saturday show. So thank you for joining us on this Tuesday show. The Tuesday show is going to be one which deals with various issues in the news. You got a glimpse there of one of the articles that we're going to cover today. And it's going to be a show that where we talk a bit more about what's been going on in the country, what's the latest in the country over the past week or so, what are some of the issues that have changed. And in that way, we'll be able to discuss a bit. Of course, we always try to have a laugh here on the Lowdown. We'll want to discuss a bit what has gone on in the country. So share the link, folks. Share the link. Let's try and let everyone get a chance to engage with us tonight, to have fun with us tonight. Share that link, folks. I'm your host, Elson Lowe. It's good to see you guys again. Always good to be on. Share the link. Let's try and get everyone in. Let's try and get everyone in tonight. Apologies for a slightly late start, folks. Apologies for a slightly late start. But we're going to be having a fun show as we always do. It's going to be interesting. We've got a few areas to cover. Usually, I cover primarily economic issues. However, we'll talk a bit about the appointment of judicial officials this evening. And I can give you some background about petro states, oil states, countries that rely heavily on oil, and how judicial appointments are kind of tied to that. So it's a different angle on things, and that's something that was covered in the press conference today. So it'll hopefully lend a little bit of perspective to give you a sense of why it is so important that we get these judicial appointments that we get these things settled. So share the link, folks. Share the link. Let's try and get everyone in. We're going to have an entertaining time, as we always do here on the Lowdown, as we always do here on the Lowdown. This is again our Tuesday night show. We've got a Tuesday night and the Saturday night show. So we've got two shows. Lowdown is growing. The Tuesday night show, however, is more of a news review show, whereas the Saturday night show, we go into a bit of depth about various issues in the country. We cover a wide range of issues. We've talked a bit about Amalia Falls Hydro. We've talked a bit about the Demerara Harbor Bridge. We talked a bit about power generation and solar power generation. We'll brush on that tonight. We don't go into as much depth on the news review show. We just talk a bit more about current issues, some of which raise alarm and are very concerning. So we'll chat tonight. We'll cover a wide range of issues. We'll chat a bit about what's going on with the appointment of the Chancellor and Chief Justice. So we've seen some changes there, and we've actually seen in the press conference today, the leader spoke at length about that particular issue. We're going to look at the cost of living issue again, which remains prevalent. We're seeing a rise in the price of gas once more, but you don't need me to tell you that. I'm sure that you're well aware that there's been another rise in the price of gas. So that's again very concerning, and something that I can assure you we are looking very closely at in the PNCR. So that's something we'll talk a bit about. We'll talk about the $150,000 cash grant to Fisherfolk. Of course, we are sympathetic to difficulties that they're facing in that particular industry. And so we'll chat a bit about about that issue, and we'll even talk about food insecurity, people being concerned that they'll be able to put food on the table, which is, I mean, in a time of plenty like this, is there anything that could be more alarming than people being worried about being able to put food on the table? That's one of the most alarming things you're going to hear. Finally, we'll close out with a quick talk about developments in the oil and gas industry that are a bit concerning regarding workers in that industry. So we'll talk, just brush on that. Of course, we want to ensure that Guyanese feel always that they are the true beneficiaries of what's going on in the oil and gas industry, and that they feel comfortable with what is going on, and that they are able to advance their lives because they're able to get access to opportunities. That's a real priority for the PNCR, advancing the opportunities, advancing people's lives, helping people to grow and build wealth. That is a real priority for the PNCR, and something that we've spent a lot of time thinking about, and policies that we've put forward are all geared towards ensuring that this is what indeed happens. So we'll talk a bit about that. Folks, share the link. Share that link. Let's try and get everyone in tonight. Let's try and give everyone a chance to see the show. We've got always got an entertaining show for you guys. So we'll plunge into some interesting issues. So share the link. Share the link. Let's try and get as many people on as we can. We'll even talk tonight about the temporary jobs, these $40,000, and you come in for 10 days. Sounds nice, but we're hearing that these temporary jobs will be more than temporary. They may last for multiple years, which is very interesting. Very interesting. So we'll talk a bit about that. Of course, we as much as we want to see support go out to people, especially in these difficult times with cost of living. Whether this is the most effective mechanism is one question, and the second is, is this going to be a mechanism that we want to see over the longer term? So that's something that we're going to consider. That's something that we're going to talk a bit about. as well. So share the link, guys. Let's get everyone in. Let's try and get everyone to have an opportunity to be with us here on the Lowdown. You're here with your host, Elson Low. This is our show, Issues in the News, one of our two shows. We have a Saturday night show, which covers issues in a bit more depth. This show is really just a news review show, keeps you up to date on some of the pressing issues, gives you some perspective on those pressing issues, helps you to kind of get a sense of the direction the country is going. So that's what this is. This is a new show. Share the link, folks. Let's get everyone going. And on that note, we can kick off with the first issue. So let's get the first slide up, if our operators would be so kind, and we'll get the ball rolling. Okay, so today, if you were looking at the press conference, the leader spoke at length about the appointment of the Chancellor and Chief Justice, and in fact, the leader spoke quite a bit about the importance of proper consultation and meaningful consultation. Now we've got essentially a letter that was put out there where the leader is indicating, of course, he's the leader of the opposition. He is indicating that he is happy to appoint, that the president has his assent to appoint two particular justices to the post of Chancellor and Chief Justice. So that is something that the leader has indicated. He's ready for that appointment. Now, we've heard from the PUP that they're not ready to consider the Chancellor and Chief Justice post at all, that they're not ready to have that conversation. That's what the PUP has been saying. Why they're not willing to have that conversation is fascinating, and a question that I think everyone should ask themselves. So, of course, Justice Janet Cummings is looking to be appointed as the Chancellor, and Justice Roxanne George Wiltshire as Chief Justice. So these two individuals have the assent of the Leader of the Opposition. And so the ball really is in the court of the PPP to appoint these particular individuals to those posts on a permanent basis, as opposed to an acting basis, which is what they're currently doing. Now, why is this important? Why does it matter that we have these justices appointed on a permanent basis rather than an acting basis? Well, most generally, the thing that we're trying to avoid is that we don't want to see justices in any way influenced by political actors or feel that they could be pressured to be influenced. So we want to ensure as much as we can that justices are comfortable in their particular posts and feel confident that they can be free from political intervention at all times. So that's generally why you would want to make sure that justices are not acting. Of course, if you're acting, you can be removed and you can no longer be acting. But if you're confirmed, it's much more difficult to remove you. And so we want to ensure that justices are always in a comfortable and confident position in terms of where they stand. That's something we want to always ensure. And that's something that we want to build out as the country goes forward. So this is a step in the right direction. The appointment of these justices generally, the appointment of justices generally would be a step in the right direction in terms of building our institutions and making sure that we get good and fair and just decisions. That's not to say we don't get good and fair and just decisions, viewers, but it's to say that this is something which is important to our institutions as a whole and important to the way that the country functions. Now, one of the things that I want to highlight, however, is that there's an additional danger that can come from countries that have quite a lot of oil, as we do. And I can give you the example of Venezuela. And in fact, there's, you can Google it, but there's endless articles talking about the deep concern that the justices in Venezuela were really prejudiced and put in place by the regime that was in power there, and that essentially petrodollars, oil money, has been used to influence the courts in Venezuela and to ensure that the opposition has almost no say, but more than that, much more than that, to ensure that the citizens have almost no say. That's an allegation that's been leveled against those in Venezuela. And it has indeed been argued that that particular regime made a concerted, strategic, and thorough effort to replace all justices that they could within their legal system, so that they were always in control of the courts. And of course, oil money will make that easier for you because you can easily bribe judges and so on and so forth. Now, we're not saying that judges are being bribed in Guyana. Not by any means are we saying that. But what we're saying is that in countries that have access to oil resources, which is, a lot of cash, first of all, but also a lot of cash in hand, that there is an additional danger that may often fly under the radar, and that is that it is much easier for judges to be influenced when there's that circumstance around. So we don't want to see that in Guyana as the country gains oil revenues. We don't want to see that by any administration. Some may level the claim that, oh, it's just a PNCR paranoia or something to that effect. But the important thing is that across all administrations, we want to, as much as possible, see that people have confidence in the judicial system. That's really what is important. And one quote is that justice must not just be done; it must be seen to be done. So that's something that is I can't remember the particular author right now of that quote, but that's essentially what that's all about. And now that we're heading into an oil economy, we have to be even more vigilant than we might otherwise have been. We have to be even more vigilant. So, in terms of building, strengthening, helping our institutions to function the way that they should, Leader of the Opposition has now made a strong move in terms of putting forward his assent for these two names, for the Chancellor and for the Chief Justice, to be appointed. And now that that has happened, it is really up to the PPP to actually make these appointments. Of course, citizens, you have to ask yourself, if they do not make these appointments, why it is that they're not making those appointments. It's a simple question. What is the reason? Why is it that these judges, if they're not appointed, why are they not being appointed? You can draw your own conclusions from that, citizens. I'm sure that you can draw your own conclusions from it. But it is very concerning if the PPP does not push forward these appointments. It is very concerning. We want to see progress in our institutions. We want to see our institutions built out. But of course, the PPP does not have a very good record when it comes to institutions. The Public Procurement Commission is a great example of a constitutionally mandated commission, something the Constitution says you have to have, which they refuse to put in place. It's the coalition that properly staffed and put in place that commission. And even after the Public Procurement Commission is only now coming back in, and this is 2 years into another PPP term. So it is demonstrated on more than one occasion that there is an unwillingness for oversight. Public Procurement Commission, of course, oversees procurement, which is related to procurement fraud. And so any administration, any government rather, any party that does not put in place oversight bodies that are mandated by the Constitution, when there's corruption, is something that those oversight bodies are supposed to weed out. I think it raises some questions. I don't know if it raises any questions for you, citizens. I don't know if it raises any questions, but I would submit to you that maybe there's some questions to be asked there. It's an interesting thing. Oversight. What kind of a political party wouldn't want oversight, viewers? But for what reason would they not want oversight? What's the reason? Is there a reason? So I would say that similarly, you should ask, is there a reason that these judges, if they're not appointed, would not be appointed? Can the government give some reasons, some credible reasons, or are we just going to be blessed with the absence of an explanation? Is that what's going to happen? We're going to have the absence of an explanation as opposed to an actual explanation. I have full confidence that the PPP will provide reasons and, of course, appoint these judges. But viewers, I may be disappointed, and they may not appoint these judges. That I may be terribly disappointed by this. So, let's see what the PPP does on that particular issue. But it is very concerning because when we're talking about an oil money economy, when we're talking about an oil money government, there's much more danger that the judicial system can come under pressure and influence and bribery and so on. So we have to be mindful of the future, not just of the present. We have to be mindful of what could happen, not just what is happening. And so it is important that we strengthen as much as possible our institutions. Appointing these two judges will, at the very least, help to make those institutions more robust. And I believe that that's why the leader of the opposition has indicated that this is something that he wants to see happen. It's to help to strengthen those institutions. So let's see what happens. That's something that's come up. That's something that I think raises alarm bells. But let's see what happens. Okay, so that's one of the issues that's dominated the headlines lately. Let's go on to another one. Let's get the next slide up. Okay, viewers, so we've got here an article indicating that Trinidad and Tobago is pursuing solar power generation, while Guyana continues to talk about hydroelectric power. And hydroelectric power, of course, is in the form of the Amalia Falls Hydro Project. It's in the form of the Amalia Falls Hydro Project. Now, this project has been I think I've used the words Amalia Fall Hydro more than I've used many words, which I don't think is a good thing. Trinidad and Tobago has recognized the value of solar power, has recognized that solar power is just cheaper and so in so many ways than many other forms of power. In fact, it's the cheapest form of power currently in terms of the cost per kilowatt hour, 2 or 3 cents. Hydro, tends to be a bit more expensive than that. And in fact, it depends also on the risks that are associated with hydropower. Now, the reason that I think the article is framed as Guyana chases hydropower is that we've been looking to get hydropower for quite some time now. Quite some time. Amalia Falls would have been talking about this for 10 years now. I mean, it's quite a long time that this has been an issue that's dominated Guyanese conversation, Guyanese headlines. And we've still not been able to get any hydroelectric power. I'll tell you a secret, viewers. I suspect we may never get hydroelectric power. But anyway, while we continue to see the government absolutely struggle to pull this off, the latest thing that has happened in this continuing saga, is that the Chinese contractor who was originally put in place, originally agreed to build the Amalia Falls Hydro project, has pulled out, saying that they're finding difficulty in terms of securing financing. I believe that's what was said for the project. So they pulled out and they say they want the government instead to finance the project. So they've pulled out, and now we're hearing from the government that they're going to potentially send this project back to be retendered so we can get another contractor so we can get this going again. Now, of course, the retendering process will take several months. Negotiations will take several months. That will push the Amalia Falls Hydro project back again. What are we, 2 years into the PUP's time in office? Let's say that pushes us back by another 6 months, maybe even a year. I would say this, which I find to be interesting. A solar power plant, which should be simple to do, could easily be done on the coast. This could have already been done. It could have already been done and supplying power to the Guyanese grid. Could already have been completed. But we're seeing the government continue to go after this hydro project. Now, there are studies that indicate that Amalia is the best place within Guyana to go after hydropower. However, one interesting thing is that, first of all, those studies are quite old, so it's a long time now. And second of all, somebody said that hydropower is the best form of power. I mean, solar is much cheaper now, and in fact, the studies predate. The studies come from before solar was this cheap. Solar is now much cheaper than it was when those studies were actually commissioned. And so the idea is that maybe they were right then, but are they right now? That's number one. And number two, I mean, there are other energy sources than hydro. I mean, even wind, if you really want to do something different. So this is a point of real concern, and we're seeing other countries. We've seen Barbados put up a solar installation. We've seen Trinidad now look at a solar installation, but Guyana, no, we don't do things like that. Cheap electricity. How could you say that we should bring cheap electricity to Guyana? What a preposterous concept by the government. Oh my God. Cheap electricity? No, no, we have to have expensive electricity. Can't have cheap electricity here. That's crazy. So that is what we're seeing from the government. A continuation of a perpetual headache in the Amalia Falls Hydro Project. Of course, I believe that it's not in the best interest of the country for Amalia Falls to be where we get our electricity from. I think that the Guyanese economy will underperform by tens of billions of dollars every year for decades because of this using this power source relative to other power sources, and that's in the best case scenario. However, I will admit a certain degree of entertainment by the fact that the government continues to push this project. And the thing that's really funny about Amalia Falls Hydro, folks, here's the killer of this. We're all always talking here about best case scenario, best case scenario. Now, many of you who may be watching will recall that I think it was a month or so ago, I said that there is a 0% chance that Amalia Falls will go ahead without a hiccup. I said it was a 0% chance. We have already had a hiccup, right? We've already had a hiccup. The Chinese contractor has pulled out. So, as I said, there's a 0% chance that this project would go ahead. There's also, in my humble opinion, a 0% chance that the Amalia Falls Hydro project will be completed on time, even if it is started. There's 0% chance. Why? Because the project is all the way in Region 8. All the way in Region 8, where you've got roads that don't even exist. They have to build a road. You've got difficult weather conditions. The roads sometimes wash away in those areas. You got to bring in heavy equipment. Again, roads wash away, heavy equipment. Have you seen the videos of people traversing the trail to get to Letem? I mean, it's unbelievable. It's literally unbelievable how terrible it is. And we're going to go and try and do a hydro project all the way there when we could easily do a solar project right on the coast or some other form of electricity right on the coast. The probability that it'll be finished on time, I believe, to be 0%. I was right already about the probability of there being no hiccups. So hopefully I'll be right again. But hey, got one in the win column there. So that's what I'm trying to get at, folks. There's easier ways to do this. I cannot understand for the life of me why the government continues to do it. However, I will admit that I find it to be deeply entertaining that they continue to do this. I'm curious to see what the next hiccup will be. This is a wild ride, folks. We've been riding the Amalia train for a long time. And it looks like we're going to continue to be riding it. It's just sad that the country will, first of all, be spending so much money behind, if this project goes ahead, of course, behind something like this. And second of all, that it's going to take a long time before we see the cheap electricity from Mali that we expect to see. We're already delayed and delayed and delayed, and it may never come. It's very sad, citizens. And I'll leave the Amalia note with one last Amalia note with you. There are some estimates that rather than the 700 million price tag the government has put forward, there are some estimates that Amalia may cost as much as $3 billion US to actually get done because of how difficult the project is. And in fact, there's some estimates that say that the transmission line, just the line to connect the coast to Amalia, will cost about 900 and something million US. Whereas they're saying the whole project should only cost 700 million US. So I'll put it to you this way. I find it interesting that they're continuing on this project, and I would describe it as probable that we're going to see further issues. 0% chance that everything will go according to schedule. But hey, we're gonna keep looking. We're here for the ride, viewers. So let's get to the next slide. We'll go on to the next issue. Okay, so Fisherfolk to receive 150,000 cash grant soon, and they've been Fisherfolk have been urged reportedly not to cheat the system. I would similarly urge Fisherfolk not to cheat the system. If you could kindly avoid that, that would be appreciated. Um, but essentially, now we've got a $150,000 cash grant, a one-off grant to the Fisherfolk. That's great. I'm glad that they're receiving some assistance. The Fisherfolk have had a difficult period. However, I would ask one interesting question. We've seen Gaisuko workers receive $250,000 cash grant. So, is there a reason that the fisher folk are receiving 100,000 less than the Gaisuko folks? Is there a specific reason for that? Seems strange to me. What's that? A 60% more. Gaisuko folks are receiving 60% more than fisher folk. Is there a reason for that? Are the Gaisuka workers 60% more valuable in the eyes of the government? What's really going on here? Fisherfolk, why aren't you getting $250,000 as opposed to 150 as as the sugar workers are getting? That seems strange to me. And I would say that's one thing. The other thing is there a specific reason that you're not getting $151,000? Or $155,000 or $160,000? Is there justification for this specific amount? I think that's a bit unclear by the government, a bit unclear. Okay. So this is this is an instance of, as much as we'd like to see Fisherfolk get relief because they are going through a difficult period, it's really an instance of the government not seeming to have a demonstrable a plan or a structure in place, or I mean, it's just whatever they feel like on the day they seem to be doing. So I don't know what is going on here. And the question, of course, is $150,000 a lot or a little? Is it enough? Is it not enough? Should it be a grant that's multiple years? Should it be 1 year? There's no explanation for these things. It's just, oh, here, take $150,000 and that's that. But meanwhile, the sugar workers are getting a full 100,000 more than you. This for no with no real explanation why they're getting so much more money than you. 60%, a little bit more than 60% more than you. You know, so it could be that you're just not worth as much to the PPP as the sugar workers. And I guess if you're not worth anything to PPP, you get less cash or you get less cash, you get no cash grant up. I guess that's how it works. Is that how it works, viewers? It's not who needs the money, it's who PvP happens to value. That's how this thing works. Interesting. And does that mean that you, as fisher folks, as fishermen, are being shortchanged of $100,000, easily shortchanged of $100,000? That's a rough one, a tough pill to swallow. Maybe you should say that this 150,000 should be bumped up to 250. Let's see what happens here. But that's one thing that has come up in news: the question of the $150,000 to the fishermen. Now, we're happy. We acknowledge that there's been difficulties in the industry. There's low catch. There's a question of low catch returns. There's a question of an increase in the price of fish because of a lack of catch, of people not being able to get as many fish, catch as many fish as they normally would be able to. So it's a difficult situation. However, is it 150,000 difficult? Is it 200,000 difficult? Is it 250,000 difficult? There doesn't seem to be any justification, folks, and this is a trend across the policy making of the PvP, that you call out a number. Is the number a lot? Is the number a little? Even with the $25,000 cash grants, do you know that in other countries the cash grants are designed around the minimum wage of a country, and so the cash grants are intended to be equivalent to a minimum wage salary for a month or so? $25,000 is not the minimum wage. Again, it's what kind of planning is going into these things? You know, I mean, as I always say, I have a bit of a dark sense of humor, so I find it to be hilarious that this is the approach to policy making. But from the perspective of citizens, I mean, citizens should at least be getting through these cash grants a minimum wage amount to help to support them, not amounts that are so much below the minimum wage. And I'm just saying that in other countries, that's how they look at it. They look at what the minimum wage is, and the minimum wage is there for a reason. And the reason, of course, is that it's the minimum amount that we believe that someone can live off of in a society. That's generally what minimum wage is thought to be. But reason, logic, structure, these things aren't necessary. You just wake up in the morning and decide you're going to give out X amount, and that's the way you make policy. I guess that's what the PUP is all about. That's how the PUP makes their policies. Very interesting. Don't you find that to be interesting, viewers? Okay, so that's the cash granted to Fisherfolk. Let's get the next slide up. Okay, so here you've got an opposition MP talking about the price of gas, and so it's gone up once more. This is increasingly putting pressure on the average consumer. We're hearing the government say that they can't do anything more about the rise in the price of gasoline, that nothing can be done, but it's gone up again. We've seen the excise tax reduced down to zero. So that has gone gradually be reduced down to zero, but that's what any government would have done. What additional measures, what other strategies are in place to help people to deal with these issues? Can't hear anything. So I guess you're just going to have to bear these high prices. Now, oil is, of course, a very volatile thing. It could head down, it could head up. But there is a real risk being discussed by economists and by oil and gas traders and so on, that oil will go to 150. There's a real risk that it will go that high. And there's the reason that oil tends not to reach these higher prices for prolonged periods is that it causes economies to slow down and it triggers recessions and so on and so forth. But there's a question as to whether the US and other major economies will be able to resist the recession for longer than they might have in the past. And in fact, $120 or so around this level has triggered recessions in the past. So what we're looking at right now is a situation where you may see much higher oil prices. It's not so long ago that oil was at $74 a barrel, viewers. It's not so long ago. So now you're looking at oil potentially going to 150. That's going to be some pain in your pocket. We can tell you that. It's going to be some pain in your pocket. But it's also going to cause higher prices across a wide range of goods that depend on the oil and gas industry for energy production and for their manufacturing and so on. And so this is something that you're going to feel, transportation as well. You're going to feel this across the entire economy. So this is an issue of real concern. Of course, if the price goes down, happy days, for consumers at least. But the price is continuing to be very high, and we remind viewers, remind you, this little secret that we've got for you. Guyana produces oil. Whoa! So viewers, if we produce oil, aren't we benefiting from this higher price? Why is the government locking off all of the benefits and letting average citizens suffer the consequences of the higher oil price? Or is it that they think that nobody knows that we're producing oil? Everybody knows. So what are you doing? We'll see what the government's approach is to this. But this is a real tragedy. The country at a $74 oil price was projected to grow at 50% this year. So imagine at $120 oil price, what the country is expected to grow at, the rate the country is expected to grow at. An incredible rate, and if this keeps going, it could be even more than that. So I invite you viewers, this is something I've mentioned in other shows. For every show, we're going to do an oil price check. The oil price today is, from what I can tell, is $120 a barrel. $120 a barrel. Making bank, viewers, making bank. Guyana is doing really well. It'd be absolutely wonderful if Guyanese were able to also do really well. Crazy idea. I guess the PPP thinks that it's a secret that that we're producing oil and nobody knows this. Very interesting. But anyway, so that's another real issue of concern. Let's get over to the next slide. Okay, so now that we've talked a bit about the pressures that come from the oil and gas surge, now we've talked a bit about how expensive things are getting, and we've talked a bit about how cash grants in other countries are related to the minimum wage. We're hearing again from the various union organizations that there needs to be an urgent revision of the national minimum wage. urgent. This minimum wage proposal, there's been a proposal for a move from 44,200 to 60,000. And of course, if the minimum wage is increased, this will cause other wages across the economy to be increased. There's a proposal for that to be put forward that's been approved by a ministry committee that did various consultations. So they're looking to increase the national minimum wage. But this has been sitting before cabinet for several months now. For months, it's been sitting before cabinet, and they have not approved this national minimum wage increase. Why? Again, it's a good question for you to ask viewers. Why have they not increased the national minimum wage? Do you have a no view is that during the same period that the national minimum wage has been stagnant, we've seen Guyana's stock market, that's to say the value of the companies, the money they're making, these companies have gone up 500% over the course of that same period. Meanwhile, the minimum wages remain flat. And on the other end, we're seeing tremendous pressure on prices. Prices are going up and up and up. And food prices at one point last year were up 14.5%. Viewers, you don't need me to tell you that things are tight out there. As a gentleman had mentioned, shouted out in the crowd, things is not nice at all. That was an entertaining way to frame it, but essentially, the minimum wage has been flat. We have not seen this minimum wage be approved to be increased, even though it is a matter of great urgency. But at the same time, we've seen prices go through the roof, and the poorest, the people at the lowest end of the income scale are those who suffer the most on the high prices. That's what economists say. Why? Because they don't own any stock and they don't own businesses and so on. You know any poor person or lower income person rather who owns a whole lot of stock? No, so they haven't been getting 5 times richer in the past few years, but instead they have been getting poorer because the cost of goods has gone up so much. And so that is an issue of real concern. We need to improve, we need to increase the national minimum wage. It is not going to take 10 minutes worth of effort to do it. It's already gone through all the approval processes. They just need to do this. It is a matter of great concern. And I would say this just out of a sense of sympathy for the average Guyanese. Really, you're going to leave the national minimum wage at $44,000? Who can live off of $44,200? People can't live off of that. How are you going to leave that there? That's crazy. That's unbelievable. How can the government, how can the PVP leave the national minimum wage at that level? That's unbelievable. So that really needs to be rectified as soon as possible. And hopefully that will provide some ease to citizens. That's a considerable increase in minimum wage. There's been calls for even higher increases, and we're looking closely at this issue because it is totally unacceptable for the minimum wage to remain at the level that it is at. It is wholly unacceptable. And again, we stress companies are making money in this country, making money. They keep reporting huge profits. Come on, let's do something about this. This is a tragedy in the making, if it's not a tragedy already. And it's just brought on by the PVP refusing to take action. Let's jump across to the next slide. Viewers, sorry, these are a few dark headlines. This is something I mentioned before that's come up again. Guyanese are skipping meals to beat high food prices. And the FAO is even saying that local food insecurity surpasses the regional average. Now, I throw it to you this way, Guyanese. I throw it to you in a way that I hope you'll find compelling or convincing. First of all, how in the world is the fastest growing country on earth, a country that people are saying they're suffering from food insecurity and cutting back on meals and so on to get by? How are these two things existing in the same space? Number one. Number two, how is it that we in Guyana are more concerned about where we're going to get our next meal than the other countries in the Caribbean, which are growing, sometimes not even 1/10 of the speed, at not even 1/10 of the speed we're growing at. We're growing 10 times faster than these folks. And they're feeling more comfortable about day-to-day issues like whether they'll have food tomorrow. This is unbelievable. How can we allow something like this to stand? This is really speaks to a huge, unbelievable level of inequality in the country, and accelerating level of inequality in the country. But of course, the PVP, I don't know if you know this, is not listed inequality as one of its main concerns or main issues going forward in Guyana's development. It's not listed that. And so it sounds like this is going to be the status quo going forward, which is deeply, deeply troubling. How in the world can you have the fastest growing country in the world, an oil price, again, let's make sure that everyone remembers this. It's $120 a barrel. It's really, really high. It's unbelievably high. And people are out here unable to figure out where they're gonna get their next meal. I mean, are we living in a nightmare here? This is crazy. So this is something that's come out in a report, and it reflects, I think, what's going on with the average consumer, where they're not able to really feel confident that they'll be able to meet all of their needs in their family. They're cutting back. They're trying to scrunch and find ways. But that's exactly what's going to happen if you have a minimum wage that doesn't increase, if you have salaries that are not increasing, public servant salaries barely increasing, and prices at the pump, prices for food and so on and so forth, going through the roof, straight up, skyscrapers. Those are the skyscrapers that are growing the fastest in Guyana. This is wholly unacceptable. This is a time of plenty, a time of plenty. We should not be punishing poor people, but that's what the PvP seems to be all about, punishing poor people. So that's what we're hearing. I'll jump on to the next slide, and you'll see that this has been, it's been recently reported that there's going to be more surveys done on this food insecurity, on this question of whether people are going to be able to meet their needs in terms of what they need to actually eat. And again, very concerning, I often say that oil is a funny thing. Oil is a tricky thing, and it is very possible for things to get worse rather than get better. And in fact, in Equatorial Guinea, which has an incredibly high rating of corruption, is generally considered to be one of the most corrupt countries in the world. What you've actually seen is that after they got oil, various measures of governance, the well-being of the people, all of that went down. They actually saw a fall in the standard of living of the people, fall in the quality of governance. And so that is exactly what you're seeing right now. People's standard of living has fallen. And I'll take this opportunity to remind you, viewers, before we jump to the next slide, that not even 1% of the national budget was put towards cost of living mitigation. Less than 1%. So it seems like the PvP not caring about inequality is reflected in the way that they've put forward a national budget. Let's get the next slide up. Okay, so now we're hearing about the part-time job initiative. Citizens can benefit from the government's part-time job initiative for years to come. Now, there's two things about this statement that I want to highlight. The first being that, and this is a point that the leader of the party has made, which is that this seems to be an admission that the PvP is unable to generate jobs the way that they had said that they would generate all of these jobs. It seems to be an admission of that. They're relying now on part-time jobs to generate, to actually have jobs in the economy. So that's very concerning. But the second thing, which I think the PvP sees this as a good thing, or sees this as a benefit when they're speaking, saying that part-time jobs can be for multiple years. These part-time jobs, you make up $40,000. You have to come in 10 days in the month. You mean to tell me that you intend to have Guyanese working for $40,000 for years on end? You mean to tell me that you intend to keep a scheme that is paying next to nothing going for years on end? That is what the PvP intends? What's going on here? What is going on here? This is the PvP strategy for moving forward the country, to pay off $40,000 a month. And the other thing that I find to be quite entertaining is that it seems the PvP thinks That $40,000 is a lot of money. I will take this opportunity to remind you viewers that's not even minimum wage, and they're operating like this is a lot of money. I think this. I think that the PAP does not have a good grasp of what's going on in this country, because I don't understand that. First of all, you're throwing out $40,000 a number, and second of all, you're saying that you want to keep paying people these types of numbers for years. Whoa! I think maybe the PAP thought that that was a good thing and a good policy, but whatever the opposite of a good policy is, that's the opposite. So I would it seemed to me that what we really should be looking for in this country is to move people into the high-paying jobs in the oil and gas sector, move people into other high-paying jobs, raise wages, raise the income levels across the board, raise people's wealth, get things moving, not have thousands upon thousands of people in part-time jobs that are paying less than the minimum wage for prolonged periods of time, years. Now, why is this happening? Why are we seeing this? BAP's trickle-down economics policy, or trickle-down economics approach, relies heavily on job creation in order to actually function well, in order for them to actually have success. But that job creation is tied to things like manufacturing and so on, which is tied to things like cheap electricity. Citizens, we have cheap electricity on the horizon, or we just had a controversy again with the Amalia Falls Hydro project, which is supposed to deliver this cheap electricity. So can you see how the failure on one end by the PVP has resulted in a failure in another end? This is quite entertaining. Let's see where this goes. But the flip side, of course, is that we don't want to see citizens struggling, getting only $40,000, not getting a high-paying job. Entry-level positions in many areas of the oil and gas industry is 400,000, 10 times this 40,000. What are we doing? This is a totally wrong-headed way to approach this. This is really wrong-headed. So as a result, I think that the country really can't stand for these types of policies as the standard that we're going to see going forward. Let's get the next slide as we roll on down to the end of the program here. Let's get the next slide. Okay, so we've now got the local unions GAU calling out a firm. We don't know which firm. Regarding the paying expatriates. First of all, them paying foreigners more than they're paying local Guyanese. Of course, there's a question here as to whether the foreign employees might be more qualified and so on. However, if they have the same qualifications as Guyanese, they should be getting the same salary as Guyanese. I think that is pretty clear. But the second thing is that they're saying that they're increasing the wages of the expatriate workers, of the foreign workers, but not increasing the wages of the local workers. I'll say this first important point. We don't know what firm this is. We have no idea what firm is doing this. And this is, of course, an allegation, so we'll have to take it all with a grain of salt. However, I think this raises more broadly an important issue, which is that we as Guyanese need to be treated at all times in the same way that foreign workers are treated. Now, this may mean worker safety. We need to have the same levels of safety in the workplace as foreign workers. This may mean compensation. If we have the same qualifications, we should be paid the same amount as foreign workers. This could mean that benefits such as out-of-work benefits such as health care or other benefits, and in this particular instance, salary increases, should be the same as those for the foreign workers. We have gone through a long process in this country of moving to independence and of gaining rights as an independent country. It would be very sad, and I think that both Chetty and Burnham would turn over in their graves to know that we're going back to a system where foreign workers who have the same qualifications as Guyanese are earning more than Guyanese in their own land while extracting Guyanese commodity resources, Guyanese resources. This is the opposite of why we fought for independence. The opposite. Whatever it is we fought for independence, This is the opposite of that. So we want to see at all times Guyanese benefiting in the same way that we see foreigners benefiting. Of course, we're not saying that we're unfriendly to foreign workers. We need foreign workers in order to get these industries going at the rate at which we want to get them going. We absolutely need to see that. But at the same time, we want to see that Guyanese are able to benefit the way they should, are treated the way that they should be treated, and that foreign workers work along with us, as opposed to it being that there's two classes of work or two category of work, and Guyanese are on the backward end of that. That is not acceptable. That is not the Guyana that we've all envisioned. And we as Guyanese got to recognize something which is, I think, very important. This time in a long time, you can't be treating Guyanese in that way. We're not going to accept that. We're going to accept that. But now we're going to be very aggressive about dealing with things like this. So it's good that the union is calling this out. I know that the leader of the PNCR has raised the issue of worker treatment before, and it's something that we need to, I think we can all agree. I think from founding fathers all the way forward, we can all agree that workers from foreign workers should be receiving the same treatment as local workers, the same pay as local workers once the qualifications are aligned and the experience and so on. And that is the type of society that we want to see going forward. The idea that we can have different classes and that the foreigners are going to be in the higher class with the better benefits, that's a colonial style idea, and it is not acceptable in Guyana, nor will it be accepted. So I'm glad to see that the union is calling this out. Of course, we don't know what company this is. We don't know if this is, this is just an allegation. However, in general, we believe that this is the way that the country should move forward. And I leave you now with another important thought. There needs to be, and there is not, a comprehensive, aggressive program, which we have called for training to take place for Guyanese to take these oil and gas jobs as much as reasonably possible. We need to ensure that Guyanese are able to benefit from the high salaries, not just foreigners are able to benefit from these high salaries. This is not acceptable. Guyanese must be trained and must be enabled, must be given the capacity to be able to fill these jobs. There's no point talking about local content and employing Guyanese and so on if you're not training Guyanese to take up these types of jobs. What is going on? And so we've not seen robust efforts to get Guyanese trained. We've not seen targets that say that X number of Guyanese must be trained for the oil and gas sector by this day, this day, this day. We've seen these sort of half measures. Oh, we're going to open an institute here, that. And then there's no proper targeting and there's no real urgency behind this. We need to see urgency, because what can happen, and what I think the PPP has intended, is that you'll not have Guyanese trained for these jobs. They'll import labor from all over the world. And maybe they think that the people that they bring in from all over the world will be more inclined to vote for them. Maybe that's why they're looking to have that strategy. But I think it will cause serious social strife if we see that Guyanese are not able to access these opportunities. Don't you, as a Guyanese, want to get access to a job, pay you $400,000 just to start out? Don't you feel that you, as someone who's worked and studied and amassed experience, a local person should be able to get access to that? That's the dream here. That's what we want for everyone. We want everyone to get access. When we talk about the sugar workers, it's not that we just have a problem with sugar workers. It's that we want the sugar workers to get access to higher paying jobs. We want them to get access to a $400,000 a month job. We want them to get access to a really nice house in a really nice area, and to be driving the Benz and smiling all the way home. We want everyone to get access to this dream. We want everyone to get access to this new Guyana, not just the ones who are connected to the PPP and got lines. So from that perspective, we don't want that future of great inequality and lack of access. But I remind you, viewers, the PPP has not indicated that inequality is one of the pillars or the most important things that they're considering for the future, which is, I would describe it as very alarming. And on that note, I will bring another episode of another night here with Elson Low here on the Lowdown to a close. thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you on Saturday evening and then on Tuesday evening, 7 to 8. That's when we're always on. And we always try to have a laugh, start your week high on a high with Elson Low, and we'll catch you in the next one.
Thank you for watching our program. See you right back here, same place, same time. And remember, hold the line of battle, comrades. Our victory is sure.